All right, thanks for joining everyone. We can go ahead and get started. So this is one of the first AMAs we're doing on Discord with the co-founders for 2023, and we're excited to do a lot more and keep getting more involved with the community and you all here. So thanks for joining, and excited to answer a lot of questions we've received already in Telegram, Discord, Twitter. Lots of great questions so far, so we're ready to address them all and hear from you guys in the chat as well. So feel free to keep asking questions, and happy to have you all here. So I wanted to kick it off first with Raolan and Jing. Would be interested in hearing especially the IoTeX outlook for 2023. What can we expect? Can you give us some updates on the landscape and the roadmap, and just a general overview for our community? Pass it
Sure,
over
happy
to
to
you, Raolan.
answer. Yeah, maybe Lauren can start.
Sure. I can I think start with this one. As you guys know, like in the past few years, like the landscape of IoTeX has been expanded a lot, right? So I actually have a tweet about this one recently. So let me share it here actually in the group as well. I'm talking. So definitely like we started as a layer one EVM POS layer one, which already had like a 50 million transactions. We didn't see a single accident in the past few years, so super stable. Unlike some of the layer ones, they pause every month, right? So layer one has been a huge success. And starting from last year, so we're having thinking about, okay, so getting like a real world device data people actually to funnel into the Web3 world, there must be a middleware because as you know, layer one is not scalable at all, right? Layer one can only handles like a few hundred like transactions per second. That's it. So that's why like we started this project called the WebStream. It's another layer of decentralized protocol running on top of running on top of like the IoTeX layer one. You ultimately it will be part of the layer one. So that's kind of like a big play. But this year we will still let the web stream as a protocol itself to actually grow. We have released this V1 version recently, and we're actually prepped for DevNet launch, which should be coming, in a couple of, I don't know, weeks or a few months. So definitely it's on the way. And most excitingly, right, is like we have already some pilot customers, projects, developers, builders, companies, already start to use WebStream. Although it's still like just like a DevNet stage protocol right now, but we're so happy to see people start to use it. That means that meets some real requirement from this real world Web3, use case kind of landscape. So that's like the most important two things, like the infra team, entirely the protocol level we're working on. And of course, on top of like we have this kind of some core products you guys already know, the IOPay to provide access to 500,000 people on IoTeX as a wallet, right? IoTube has been, kind of like a very stable, secure, decentralized bridge to connecting IoTeX to other layer ones, so people can, transfer token here in and out. And we do have this fast blocks. It's like a Infura, basically running nodes for IoTeX as well as WebStream Studio. That's kind of like an interfacing for developers to use WebStream to build some meaningful projects. And we do have some hardwares, like you guys know, Paypal, you can. That's basically like our, some pilot efforts about the hardware. So 2023 will be like a huge for us. So we have a lot of internal plannings about how we do this protocol to make them fully decentralized. I can maybe give you some sneak peeks about the layer one initiatives like we're working on, but we will definitely like publish this one in a blog post maybe this week or next week. For example, liquid staking of IoTeX token, that's a pretty big one. The second one is how do we tune the staking economics so we can have like a couple hundred nodes to run this layer one. That's also an internal initiative we're working on. The third one is like a WebStream DevNet launch, like I mentioned about. And the fourth one is even more ambitious. How can we merge these two protocols just into one using one token to governance the entire stuff? The fifth one is actually the governance, right? So how do we making community more engaged with what we're doing? Why we're doing big things, right? So we need like a lot of help inputs from the community. That's why we should like kind of revive or revamp our governance process to make it more inclusive. So that's just like on the tech side. On the go-to-market side, I'm sure like Jing has some inputs here as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think Lauren covered we're building, as infrastructure. I think, with WebStream, we make it possible to, make kind of Altex and WebStream as a whole platform, go-to platform to connect all the real world data, real world utility, from the devices directed to the smart contract, and also eventually make us kind of the go-to platform, which can kind of support all type of layer ones, right? So I think that's kind of the very meaningful things. And for this year, on top of infrastructure and products, our major goal will be adoption. So I say, this year is a big year because, we will be able to support a lot of use cases, which is not happening, cannot happen, last year or, the year before, right? So here are some kind of use cases, building. Machine file deeping, definitely this is a category, Altex is always kind of committed and dedicated to push. So this category will be one of the major category to drive the adoption. So it will be included different type of use cases to directly create a device, network, connect devices, with a smart contract and create a decentralized machine network. But with WebStream, we realized actually, it can help us expand, the use cases, right? More than kind of machine file deeping. Actually, a lot of use cases like proof of humanity, like, kind of a lot of Web2 brands, they are working on how to bring the real world people, everyday people, integrate their activity into, the Web3. All type of those use cases can be included as well. That's why, recently when you're looking at what Lauren is saying, we are more talking about actually our category can be expanded to kind of how to bring the real world into the Web3 or the Web3 into the real world. We call it the real world Web3, sector. So from the ecosystem growth side, we will be extremely, focused on several things. One is, we are start to working with a lot of, promising project, existing project, like top project in the sector, to integrate with our WebStream. And we are not limited to kind of onboarding them into only one, layer one, but actually we support them to go to the multi-chains, maybe starting from Altex, starting from some other chains, and eventually they will have the capability to go to the multi-chain. And with Altex and the WebStream, we make it possible. Right. So, and we will kind of, really support, the Web2 companies. We have a BD team dedicated to approach and work with Web2 brands and understand their needs, the features, what they want, and make the WebStream infrastructure really flexible to include in all the Web3 use cases and also connect the Web2 brands. And also just like, from the marketing side, I think, probably Claire can talk more about our kind of plan, but actually we have a kind of full plan to, starting from some of the unique kind of, revamping the design of our current website and make it clean enough and to incorporate everything we are doing right now and make our website really usable. And it also paves the way for us to eventually, we will kind of working on a rebranding plan. If no detail yet, but I think just like this is something we are working on. And now, just like in terms of ecosystem, maybe some of you already realized in the past 1 week, we just announced we will be hosting a very big event, Real World. We brand it as a Real World. Actually, just like, connect the real world with the Web3. And we will make it as a kind of our event brand. And we already attracted top project in this sector. And many of them, they are already working with us. And some of them, they are already building, the product. So we will kind of just like bring together, the industry leaders, the projects, together with the CC's investors to create this ecosystem. And Altex as an infrastructure player, we really have this great position to kind of collaborate with all the players in this sector and move the entire sector into the next stage.
Awesome. Thank you, Jing. That was a great update. And thank you, Rollin. Hearing from you both on the outlook, both on the tech infrastructure side and more of the ecosystem go-to-market side. Like Jing mentioned, we're doing a lot of revamping on the marketing side, and we've received a couple of community questions about that. So I'd love to address them in a little bit more depth as well, and give you guys a look at what the marketing team is working on, not only in this quarter, but also, over the next couple of quarters throughout the year. So we're working really hard to develop this new marketing infrastructure with a whole new methodology for communications, visually design, all to complement the company's tech infrastructure. So the main focus of our approach in this short term is to evolve the brand, like Jing mentioned. As a part of this rebranding process, what we really want to do is move IoTeX from this Web3 brand and a Web3 category towards being more of a Web3 brand integrating into the real world. That's what we're all about, and partnering with projects that have the same ethos. So what this really means is trying to elevate the standard of every form of communications and marketing that we do, so that not only can we educate the space and educate the community about what we're doing, but also get people excited about, what's happening right now, what's to come, and the potential of the category as a whole. So to give a look at some of the projects that we're doing to make this into a reality, working through this brand transition idea is going to be first and foremost, and how we can start making this happen in the short term. So like Jing mentioned, this real world event that we're putting on, trying to show people what's here and now and show this first showcase of real world applications and projects building with IoTeX, and really bring that to the attention of the whole Web3 space. Something exciting we've also done is create a new redesigned newsletter called Signal, where we're sending all community updates, partnership updates, some dev updates, trying to consistently send that out so that the community stays in the know and stays informed on what's happening in the space and what's most important to know on a bi-weekly basis. We're also trying to update the community with a lot more in-progress updates. So this is in the form of a lot more video content, short-form content, showcasing different partner updates, and especially showcasing different real-world proofs and applications to give you all a look at what builders are doing. We like to talk about different partnerships and projects building, but we also want to show you guys, the different steps along the way and what progress is being done to make all of these applications a reality. But we also want to hear from the community and hear from what you guys are looking for and looking to understand more. So we want to start doing a lot more community questionnaires, get a better understanding of what the community wants to see, likes seeing, wants to see more of. So as you can see from this whole list that I've explained, there's a lot going on behind the scenes right now for the marketing team at IoTeX. And as we continue to progress through this quarter and progress through the rest of 2023, we're still just trying to lay all of these foundations for very strong messaging and communications. And hopefully you'll start to see a lot of really exciting delivery and lots of really great content for the community to engage with and get excited by, because that's ultimately our main goal with all of this. So we will definitely keep you all updated on that, and you can expect to see some really exciting things over the next quarter. I want to address this next question to Larry and hand it over to you. We've received a lot of community questions regarding the IoTeX native token versus the ERC20, and some community members looking for updates on that, specifically listing on exchanges and Coinbase specifically. So is there an update you can give to the community on this and speak a little bit more on this topic?
Sure, happy to. Welcome everyone. Really glad to be doing this AMA on a new channel, Discord, and hope the high-level updates Rollin, Jing, and Claire just provided paints a nice picture of what's coming in 2023. We kind of see it as the year of adoption and a lot of other great additions to the IoTeX ecosystem coming. To address something that's kind of been looming in the background in the past is this kind of Coinbase situation. Not just Coinbase, but there's some other exchanges that have listed the ERC20 version of IoTeX. For those that are kind of new to the ecosystem, I'll provide like a high-level background of how this token came to be. and then some things that we're working on. But at a high level, we're constantly in contact with exchanges to seek a solution. What we communicated in the past is that ultimately it's not up to us to decide what exchanges list which tokens. If it were up to us today, the native version of IoTeX would be listed everywhere. But the reasoning behind that is it requires a lot of technical work from exchanges to make these integrations happen. And given the downturn in the market, and you see Coinbase has laid off 15 to 20% of their staff even, it's not up to us. The ball isn't on our court to make Coinbase do things. But going back to the background of IoTeX ERC20, just at a high level, is IoTeX started as an ERC20 token back in 2018. In the early days, when we first got listed on Binance back in May of 2018, they listed the ERC20 version of IoTeX. And over the years, with IoTex's mainnet blockchain launch and the launch of our native token, there were kind of two tokens coexisting: the IoTeX native token and the IoTeX ERC20 token. And while we encouraged all new exchanges to list the native token, some of them took that to heart, and some of them continued to list the ERC20 token. You may have noticed for Binance, which originally listed the IoTeX ERC20 token, eventually they facilitated a ERC20 IoTeX to native IoTeX swap. And that's ultimately the long-term goal of what we plan to do with Coinbase, is to facilitate some type of token swap or get them to list this native IoTeX version. Another option we've been looking into is those that have used IoTube, our cross-chain bridge, have noticed that there's another version of IoTeX called CIOTX, and that's cross-chain IoTeX. You probably have, anytime you transact, IoTeX across chains to Polygon or to Binance chain, that would be done through CIOTeX. And one option we've been discussing with Coinbase is whether or not it makes sense to list CIOTX, which would be also somewhat of an easier integration, but not a full solution, right? So the challenge is really, the ball is not really in our court when it comes to other companies' time and other companies' resources. We push them constantly. And I think one thing that the community can do in support of this effort is just let Coinbase know. I think the more push from the community, in addition to push from the core team. I know some of you guys have reached out directly to Coinbase support or some of your friends or contacts at Coinbase, but that's really the best we can do for now. And just know that on probably a weekly basis, we're in touch with the Coinbase team, not just on this native IoTeX concept, but also other features such as staking, custody, and even their new Coinbase Cloud, Coinbase Wallet, and all of that stuff. So Coinbase is one of the busiest companies in the entire space, and no significant updates for now, but we're working hard on a solution. And hopefully you guys be patient while we navigate through these bear market scenarios. And I think once IoTeX network reaches a certain status and demand, we'll see additional demand from Coinbase to perform this action.
Awesome. Thanks for the great update, Larry. I want to actually pass over my next question to you as well. We've received a lot of questions on WebStream. So can you speak a little bit from the BD perspective on how IoTeX plans to attract big Web2 companies to adopt WebStream and what our game plan is for that?
Absolutely. WebStream at a high level is a protocol to bring smart devices and the data that these smart devices produce to smart contracts. It's not going to be an overnight scenario where big Web2 companies decide to launch their own decentralized networks. I think one analogy I can use to explain kind of the roadmap from here is looking at the NFT space, right? NFTs dating back to CryptoKitties, probably back in 2019, is when the first NFT use cases came to light. And maybe in 2021, 2 years later after the creation of the NFT concept, is when it really started to hit the mainstream attention. And late 2022 is when you started to see a lot of major traditional companies like the Starbucks and the Nikes and the Adidas start to launch their own NFT collections, right? So, when dealing with Web2 companies, and we talk to these guys all the time, it's not just about the binary decision of when or of whether or not to do it, but a lot of these companies are conscious and almost fearful of doing it the incorrect way, right? And seeing a lot of examples of Web3 companies doing this is almost a necessary prerequisite for big companies to adopt a new business model or a new strategy, right? So when we think about bringing Web2 companies, big Web2 companies into the fold, it really starts with working with Web3 startups, as we have already, and even smaller Web2 companies, which we announced one, SmartPoint, in January, and been working behind the scenes with others, including Telco in South America and a pretty large weather company, which would hopefully be announced shortly. But the progression of this is very important to consider, right? Again, bringing an analogy from the NFT space, even companies like Porsche launching their own NFT collections did so in a way that was not correct. And it was almost damaging to their brand, right? Porsche didn't sell out of their NFT collection, and it really presented a negative to their brand. So when launching an NFT collection is much easier, I think, than launching an entirely new Web3 business model. So part of our job is not just to be a technology provider to these Web2 companies, but also to be a consultant and an insights source for them, not only to launch the technology behind it, but also develop the concepts, develop the use case, develop the tokenomics that surround these use cases. So our plan, as we have shown with SmartPoint as kind of the first Web2 company, is to really provide that helping hand, not just on the technology side, which everyone knows is extremely strong at IoTeX, but also on the know-how about why and how to launch their own Web3 concepts. And one other thing I'll point out is, this question directly says, how does IoTeX plan to attract Web2 companies to adopt WebStream? It's not just adopting WebStream, but it's adopting the IoTeX platform, right? WebStream is a first of its kind protocol, but it's really not just buying into WebStream. It's also all of the tooling, all of the layer one blockchain itself, and other products that we're working on constantly. So whenever these Web2 companies make the decision to go forward and launch their Web3 products, they're going to want to work with companies and platforms like IoTeX that not just give them one single point solution, but an end-to-end solution and an end-to-end partner that can help them launch these networks successfully. So technology and use case go hand in hand, and hopefully this addresses this question sufficiently.
Awesome. That was really great to hear. Thanks for that, Larry. Alan, I want to toss over the next question to you. What are IoTex's thoughts on launching a MachineFi marketplace or some equivalent?
Yeah, so I can take this one. So I think this MachineFi marketplace we kind of put on hold for a couple of reasons. So we actually coined the term called MachineFi, and it's actually have some sort of coincidence with the Deepin, right? So they are talking about almost the same thing. So Deepin is called decentralized token incentivized physical infrastructure. That basically means like a lot of Helium like a project, not necessary for connectivity, but for maybe file storage, or for driving, or I think there are a really nice thread from Messari talking about this Deepin sector. So this is a sector actually getting a lot of tractions recently, and IoTeX definitely we're getting ourselves very prepared for being the any infra provider for those Deepin projects. So that's kind of like a things we're really focused on right now. And once we have the basic infra kind of lined up and launched and supporting them, actually we are already supporting some of the projects here. You can see in this picture. There's something really good that's coming down the road. And once we become like the infra provider for those projects, then we can talking about, oh, okay, so how does this MachineFi kind of marketplace looks like on top of this infrastructure? Does it mean, different projects can have a few clicks to launch a new decentralized wireless kind of project or like a GPS project on top of IoTeX? I feel like this kind of far down the road, but it's definitely like a plan. But before we're doing this, we want to make sure so we're doing the right thing to support those deepin projects, and we're getting like into the deepin family really deep.
Awesome, great. Thanks for that, Roland. The next community question we received comes from a Telegram user named Capasuso, and it's directed towards Jing. So could you answer if how will IoTeX create or support the creation of an NFT marketplace on IoTeX?
Definitely, great question. I think just like NFT marketplace is always one of the most kind of anticipated applications on top of our text. So here is, kind of just like how we see our position, right? So our text and, we are more like infrastructure player. So our goal is we create the most robust, and decentralized infrastructure and create all the dev, related tools and make, dev onboarding as easy as possible. But we are more kind of just like not really get into like specific applications. We are more, willing to can support, developers. They can, really building kind of one of the maybe the best kind of NFT marketplace on IoTeX, or we will kind of just like working with established NFT marketplace, maybe on other chains, and to bring them on the IoTeX chain. But here is kind of like I want to add into Lauren's point, like talking about the MachineFi marketplace. So basically, as an infrastructure, one of the most kind of popular application always about a marketplace, right? So what do you want to exchange here? I think our focus will be why why just like the developer want to build a kind of marketplace on IoTeX, and what's uniqueness of the IoTeX infrastructure. If it's the same as other layer one, actually just like the reason why they come here is not that viable, right? So from our perspective, if we launching or that we help the team, the developer team to launching the marketplace, MachineFi marketplace or NFT marketplace, it will be kind of very unique and tied to our MachineFi and real world value proposition. So we see the potential of NFT, but we see right now NFT is still in a very early stage. The utility of NFT or the category of NFT are still quite limited, right? So from our perspective, we are very excited to see new type of NFT, which will be probably uniquely kind of born and grow in IoTeX and WebStream ecosystem. For example, we are already working with some of the MachineFi projects, right? So our uniqueness is we always have a kind of a device perspective. So our marketplace, if it's an NFT, it could be kind of represent real tangible devices. And these real devices can be distributed to the device owners, be able to contribute to the device network and earn the tokens directly from their devices. So that's kind of a new type of NFT or new type of the marketplace. We are willing to see, maybe some of the kind of developer we are working with, they can create, or just like, our MachineFi lab can help, launch those type of the marketplace. So the answer is yes, we definitely support, all kinds of applications will be launched on IoTeX and WebStream. And specifically, we have kind of the, just like what type of the unique marketplace, really can support the entire growth of our own kind of ecosystem. So that's a very important part.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that answer, Jing. That was really great to hear. Larry, I want to toss this next one over to you. We've received multiple community questions about this and would love to be able to give an update on MetaPebble and when the community can expect some exciting updates on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to piggyback on Jing's answer, which also has to do with the MetaPubble answer a bit, you think about the landscape of NFTs in the past has been very focused on collectibles and membership kind of club access, right? 10,000 profile pictures, membership into a DAO gated by NFTs. But the next evolution of NFTs that we see is really about kind of like badges for things that people have completed in the real world, whether it is visiting a real world location to earn a soulbound token that shows that you've attended various events, or it's showing up at some type of event to receive an NFT that can be used for a discount for a product or redeemed for some real world asset, right? I think this is also a direction that's very unique to IoTeX and really brings the smart devices to smart contracts vision to life, right? It's not all about earning cryptocurrencies or doing activities and contributing data or contributing machine resources, but NFTs are a logical reward or incentive for people to earn. And when we think about creating infrastructure to facilitate this concept, it's not about launching our own marketplace or our own NFTs, but providing infrastructure for people to issue their own NFTs and tie different campaigns around them, right? So whether we work with a Web3 startup that wants to incentivize people to visit an event at ETH Denver, or it's working with a mainstream company that wants to, incentivize people to be healthier and earn. You see a lot of these kind of use cases where people want to incentivize their customer base to treat themselves or treat the environment better. NFTs are a really great format for that to happen. Regarding MetaPebble, this is one concept. I think I mentioned this on the Telegram chat in both the official group and the trader group in the past, but we really took a pause and really applied this philosophy that I just spoke about. It's not about us launching our own products. It's about providing the infrastructure for other people to build their own products using geolocation as kind of a service, right? So we do have a really major update regarding MetaPebble. It's going to come in a different name, but we've made it less of a closed off product and more of a developer tool. So people are going to be able to integrate geolocation into their dApps. We may also choose to launch our own campaigns using this product, but deciding not to scope it down and make it an IoTeX managed product, but an IoTeX managed piece of infrastructure on top of which other people can build products. It's something definitely to look forward to. So we'll have an update for you guys actually next week about this.
Great. Thanks so much for that explanation and update, Larry. That was awesome. We have a next community question that came from Telegram user OG Status Kenneth, and this one is directed for Rowland. So if you could answer, how will the WebStream infrastructure help bring Web2 companies into Web3 at its current stage? And if you could talk a little bit about the coming stages of WebStream and how that will change over this year.
Yeah, that's a really great question. As I kind of mentioned about, right? So like a DePIN definitely as a category or sector is rising right now. So we have like a lot of projects over there. Helium being one of them. There are HiMapper, Emo, Mindland, the Render, 3DOS, Pollen, Temple, Sweetcoin, so on and so forth. And all of them actually have one kind of critical problem. It's like this middleware computational oracle is kind of very centralized. For example, Helium, right? So everybody knows about this proof of coverage, which is like a score based on some like RF signals inputs from the router. So they calculate a score, and based on the score, it basically like the product says how many tokens you're rewarded to this miner. Unfortunately, this score has been computed on a centralized server, like at least in the Helium's case right now, that's the case. That means like if there's a software bug, if there's like a malicious engineer a lot of things can actually go wrong because everything is centralized. So lack of trust, and also it has some privacy concerns. Of course, like a poor composability, you cannot compose this one with another project easily. For a new project, there are also another problem is like a long time to go to market if they want to really build everything like from device app to this centralized kind of computational oracle in the middle to the apps. That takes a lot of time. So that's why like we scoped this project WebStream last year is trying to build up like this commonly used decentralized trustworthy infrastructure to help those developers or project, right? So what they're getting from here is like it's super easy to use. So that's like a very short time to go to market no matter what they do, and some sort of trustworthiness and privacy, as well as the compatibility to compute on top of a lot of compute a proof on top of a lot of data coming to from the real world. If you think about Chainlink Oracle, right? So that's an Oracle that's really good at a small compute on small like high value kind of data like a price feeds, then feed into the DeFi smart contract. Then WebStream is on the other end of the spectrum, right? So really good at like the high volume, maybe low value data at the very beginning and try to massage them to produce like a valuable proof and feed into smart contract for some purposes. So I definitely think like a WebStream does something very phenomenal and also breakthrough. In terms of the progress, the team has been working really hard because this is something relatively like new to the Web3 industry. No one have done this before, right? No one don't know how to do this, to be honest. So we are the first one who's doing this. But fortunately, we have some like hardworking folks, which are like a genius people actually internally. So they actually scope this one from like the engineer's perspective, actually building up like a POC or demo. Eventually, we have this like a version 1 released a few days ago. Not sure if we tweet about it yet, but we will very soon. And the version 1, what does it mean, right? So that is a very simple kind of, not very simple, but still like a basically a blueprint how this web stream should work. The plan here is try to put a few features on top of version 1 so we can launch the DevNet to the public, to the developers, to the builders, to the Web2 companies as well in about a few weeks from now. So people can actually have the access to this magic like we're always talking about. This is very, very exciting to me. And in Q3, at least for now, like the plan is we will launch the testnet and hopefully mainnet launch in Q1 next year.
Awesome. Thanks, Roland. That's really great to hear. A quick follow-up question on that as well that we received from IoTextBoy. Is there a specific plan for gas fees that are collected through transactions, or is this still in progress as well?
Sorry, what's the question? Can I say it again?
Is there a plan for gas fees collected through transactions with WebStream applications?
Yeah, so WebStream, like internally, we have a lot of discussions about the WebStream, like a token economics, of course, using IoTex, and how does that work, right? So at least for now, like internal discussion, like a very drafted version, right? Don't take this as a final thing. Like there are lots of discussions around, okay, so if WebStream is producing like a proof on behalf of a user who's doing something on, for example, giving this proof to a DApp on Polygon, then this user will pay some Matic token, right, as a gas fee to the Polygon chain. Then WebStream they will definitely like adding a very thin layer in terms of Matic token on top of, so user basically pay both. If it works out in that way, that means like WebStream itself becomes a layer that accrues a value in terms of like a layer 1 tokens. For example, IoTex, BNB, or Matic, or Ethereum, other layer 1s. And maybe this protocol can have a way to trying to, I don't know, kind of cash out the token or even like just giving those layer 1 tokens back to the stakers who's running the WebStream node. So there is some very complicated economic designs that definitely like in progress.
Very cool. Thanks for that update, Roland. That's great to hear. We have another question coming from Telegram user Kenzo SA. And this one I'm going to toss over to Larry. How will IoTex encourage adoption for crypto newbies to get involved?
That's a great question. And, the crux of the focus of every Web3 project is, not only to tap into the existing Web3 user base, but also to bring Web3 to the mainstream, right? I don't like to always give history lessons or context, but I think it's important to think about, how Web3 has evolved from 2017 and even earlier to now, right? From my point of view, everyone that's interested in finance has already jumped into Web3 because of DeFi, right? Maybe starting with Bitcoin and then thinking more about the Uniswaps, the Aves, the compounds of the world, right? So there is a huge playing field in community around finance and Web3 already. Now, in the past couple of years, we've seen similar communities being built around gaming and around collectibles and art, right? So artists that are new to Web3 have seen their counterparts in things like NFTs and other artistic kind of elements, and those that are interested in gaming are following along with play to earn and things like that, right? But that only taps a small subset of the masses, right? Not everyone is interested in finance. Maybe they don't trade stocks in the real world. Maybe not everyone plays video games, and maybe not everyone collects art and collectibles. But one thing that everyone in the world does on a daily basis is live their lives and performing real world activities, right? And I really think this is going to jumpstart the next major revolution for Web3, is finding opportunities for people that don't have a home in Web3 yet to adopt products and have an easy onboarding journey to learn about Web3. So whether it is working out, which I think more people work out than any other activity in the world, or it is contributing solar power, or all these different real world activities, even driving, as Demo has introduced. There's a lot of different avenues where real world activities being kind of oracleized to the Web3 space through WebStream and through IoTeX is really going to unlock an entire sector that mainstream people are going to be very attracted to. So it's not just IoTex's role to do this as well, right? It's also very much about the applications, the dApps that create incentives for people to do things in the real world. I think today we live in a very penalty-focused world. You do something bad, you get a fee or a fine for it. But introducing this new philosophy where you can do things that are better for yourself or better for the environment and earn incentives for it, I think is going to bring the masses to Web3 in a very real way. I think we're just at the infancy of this concept, but as more dApps come on board, more Web2 companies are going to see the concepts and the adoption and start to design their own versions of them. And IoTeX will be ready from a technology and a use case perspective to support these companies. So I think we're still early, right, guys? But if you guys believe that this real world to Web3 sector in 10 years is going to be a thing, then IoTeX has a leaps and bounds head start across any other platform. From day one, we've believed in this blockchain and IoT and real world vision. So hang tight. I think the adoption is just getting underway.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Larry. Next community question we want to talk about is twofold. Came from two different users, Jimmy Hunter and Crypto Knight 36. Larry, if you can talk about this, if there's any updates to share on MachineFi NFTs or MachineFi DAOs in general, plans for this moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. This is another way that governance is going to be applied, right? In the past, our governance process was focused on things that had to do a lot with technology or tokenomics or the core protocol, right? It was kind of limited as far as people that have a deeper understanding of the technology or the tokenomics that surround the network. And those that have seen the last burn drop proposal, where we kind of created this new bucket for the MachineFi DAO. I think the direction we're heading is to try to use these funds in order to provide folks that don't necessarily want to govern the technology or the tokenomics aspects, but have unique ideas about how to bring IoTeX to the real world as far as educational campaigns or sponsoring conferences or hosting meetups. We see the MachineFi DAO as kind of being a source of funding and a source of collaboration for folks that maybe don't see themselves in some of the more technical areas, right? So the original idea was definitely for MachineFi NFT holders to be able to govern the activities of this MachineFi DAO. And one major update from our recent mainnet version 1.9 release is the availability for Gnosis Safe to be added. Gnosis, for those that don't know, is kind of a DAO management, kind of a multi-sig framework. So the tooling that enables kind of this decentralized governance of community initiatives. A lot of these community initiatives were handed off to ambassadors exclusively in the past, but we really want to open up this kind of non-technical grants program to the ecosystem. So yeah, I know it's been also quite a long time coming as far as getting the MachineFi DAO set up. I think some other priorities, launching WebStream and working with a lot of these DApps have taken precedence, but we've been working on this from the community and the marketing team perspective. So stay tuned for updates on that.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Larry. We're receiving a couple questions in the chat as well. So Jing, maybe you could help answer this one. Does IoTeX plan to build new projects to grow IoTeX itself, or still is IoTeX focusing on the platform, providing other projects to build? If you could expand on this a little bit.
Definitely. Yeah, just like I touched on, a little bit earlier, right? So IoTeX, we want to position ourselves as an infrastructure player. And so, which means just like, that's kind of the, it's the beauty of the Web3 composability, right? So for each of the team, you should kind of just like focus on your layer. Don't need to kind of touch everything for just like, centralized, Web2 company. Normally they will do anything for themselves. But for us, actually, our goal is to be a kind of enabler, right? So we want to make, our infrastructure as open as possible, as useful as possible. And then we want to create a lot of tools to help onboarding the developers and the projects to be building on top of infrastructure. You can actually imagine us as a kind of a Web3 version of AWS or Google Cloud, right? So we as infrastructure, or even just like the ChatGPT, right? But the problem is actually even for ChatGPT, it's not a kind of fully open source, right? But for us, we want to make it kind of as open as possible. But of course, from our team, we will dedicate our time, work very closely with those high quality projects, specifically some of the big brand in Web2 space, or some of the high quality Web3 projects, which we see have huge potential or already showed the very strong kind of early traction. We will kind of put more resources to work closely with those projects and to help them drive the adoption. So we see kind of this is a kind of mutually beneficial way. Say their success will be IoTeX success, right? So our goal is we really can support large scale project which they can support millions of users, and we as infrastructure we can easily support such scale, right, and make it really kind of easy to build on. So the answer is yes, I think we will be still focused on the infrastructure and platform side, and we leave a lot of the kind of the use case opportunities to all those amazing founders, and we are here to support them. So that's why we kind of just like you mentioned yesterday, we launched this East Denver event called Real World. The goal for this event is to provide the platform and network, bring everybody together to best showcase what has been built in this sector to attract, the capital and, the investor invest more capital into this sector, right? So those are all kind of, what we are doing in addition to the technology and infrastructure.
Great. Thanks so much for that, Jing. Another chat question we've received from IoTexan, maybe Rowland or Larry, you could speak on this one, if there's any updates on foundation rewards for delegates and voters.
Yeah, so we're in the process to actually revamp the staking mechanism for IoTex, all right? So I can give some sneak peek, at least some internal thoughts here. So we want to kind of separate out this execution layer from the consensus layer. So the consensus layer could still be, less than 100 delegates. So there are large stakeholders for the network, right? So they have the final say about if this block is legit or not. But we want to have like adding a new role to the blockchain ecosystem, which is called execution nodes or E nodes. So those are like small stakeholders, maybe I don't know, like a 10K IoTex stake 10K IoTex to run such a E node, so they can participate into packaging all the transactions into one block and send it to the consensus layer. So this is a new layer we call the execution layer. Of course, everything's still like deciding or designing, and we will definitely go through the governance process to make sure this is formal and also approved by the community, right? But that's kind of like a thinking. So with that being in mind, so we're thinking about how should we structure or restructure the token economics around the staking. Because as I mentioned about, in the long run, we do want to have like a web stream node, also like running some sort of computation on top of this execution layer, right? Try to merge these two protocols into one network. Yeah, so short answer is nothing will happen in the short term, but definitely like we're planning for the midterm in terms of like staking token economics.
Yeah, Rowland gave a pretty good long-term, view about what the future consensus of IoTex will look like, based on some of these large industry trends that you see with projects like Layer Zero and things like that. I think one thing to also think about, or one thing that we've been thinking about as well, is expanding the consensus delegates group. Right now, it's limited to 36 consensus delegates, and it's always been a goal of ours to expand that to either 48 or even more in the nearer term, right? So as we think about some of these longer term changes to separate out execution and consensus, there's also likely going to be a governance proposal coming out regarding the expansion of the delegates set from 36 to 48 or something like that in the near future. And with that also comes a lot of economic changes, right? I think on the technology side is certainly a challenge. The more consensus delegates that need to reach consensus, the longer it takes. And there's a lot of things that we're working on and investigating on the tech side to make sure that consensus can be reached within the current block time of 5 seconds. But expanding the delegate set also comes with some economic implications. So maybe foundation bonus is not the correct way to handle that, but we're investigating some economic implications of expanding the delegate set, as the rewards would get diluted a bit. So yeah, I think this is something we've been considering for mainnet version 1.10, which is going to be a piggyback off of our recent 1.9 release. So hopefully expect some governance proposals regarding this in the near future.
Cool. Thanks so much for those answers, Rowland and Larry. That was really great to hear. Before we wrap up, we'll finish with one more question we've received from the chat. And Rowland, if you could speak a little bit about this. What is Shinshin's role in IoTex, and are there some insights that you can provide on our work with the IEEE?
Yeah, Shinshin is our head of research. So he's the one actually leading like the kind of research team. So in terms of like the responsibility about the research team, there are a couple, right? So one is definitely like doing the cutting edge, like a kind of academic plus engineer research on the things we want to do. For example, I think one thing he's actually working on is this sort of like a DID, device management. Thinking about we're onboarding like 10 million devices next year, right? So how do we manage those devices, and how can we incorporate our kind of incentives or IoTeX tokens into some sort of like a new version of burn drop by involving DID and device management? So that's kind of like a hard problem like he's working on. And another thing he's working on is more about, how does like a WebStream to produce like a ZK snark proofs to different smart contract in a scalable way. So very hardcore stuff. But on the other side, he's also spending some time on the industry partnership. So IEEE has been like one of them. And I think that recently we also joined this Eclipse Foundation. It's most like a European type of based foundation that has a lot of IoT companies and over there. So that's kind of like our potential partners, who's working in the same kind of vertical. We want on board onto IoTeX too. So the IEEE one, I think like the mission for this IEEE working group, like Xinxin and his team is actually leading, is about establishing some sort of like a DID identity for the Internet of Things. And we're definitely like taking some of the, standard or like white paper they did over there and to incorporate into our kind of device management initiatives or design of this new framework. I think generally speaking, I think this IEEE standard group like going so well. So we're working with some really big companies, Lockheed Martin. So Larry, so there are a few of them. Do you remember the names?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that was generally unannounced is, Philips recently joined our IEEE standard. For those that don't know about the IEEE standard, that was founded by IoTeX. The code name is P2958, and it's called Identity of Things. And the goal of this IEEE standard is to define a universal specification for how decentralized identities for devices will work. A lot of people have heard about decentralized identities for people. Basically, the concept that you can create your own identity and source your own credentials to prove who you are to other people without any centralized intermediaries. A lot of you guys may be familiar with centralized identities or federated identities, like logging in with Google or logging in with Facebook or logging in with your Apple ID. But if you breach the rules of any one of those ecosystems, they can literally take your identity away from you. Imagine if your Gmail account didn't work tomorrow and all the websites you logged in with Gmail disappear, right? So the concept of decentralized identity for people is an identity that you fully own and you're responsible for managing and sourcing credentials like your university or your driver's license or other different credentials that prove to other people who you are. And when you think about devices and bringing in millions of devices into the Web3 space, we dream of a future where devices act as autonomous agents. And from day one, IoTeX has believed that devices and machines are going to be the largest users of blockchains in this kind of decentralized machine economy future, right? And one of the prerequisites to making this vision a reality is all of these devices need their own identities, just like you have a decentralized Web3 identity. All these devices need to have their own identities, their own wallets, and their own credentials. So when they interact with smart contracts and contribute their data in a more automated fashion, then they can become blockchain users as well, right? So we started this IEEE standard maybe a year and a half ago, and have sourced some really large enterprises to contribute to this standard, from Lockheed Martin, Bosch, Lenovo, Philips, Huawei, and many other large enterprises who we are also working on other forms of research with in other enterprise consortiums like the IIC, Eclipse Foundation, Confidential Computing Consortium, etc. Right? So, long story short, our research efforts over the years are being directly applied to the products that we build in a very real way. And the decentralized identity for devices is certainly a huge challenge to think about. How do you create a standard identity format for all these different types of devices? For a vehicle, for a wearable, for a solar panel, for a drone. All of these are very different characteristics. So defining one universal
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Larry and Rowan. That concludes the end of our AMA today. Thank you so much to everyone who has tuned in, everyone who's asked questions, and just continues to support and show enthusiasm for everything we are doing here at IoTeX. We're so happy to have you be a part of our community. And a huge thank you to Jing, Rowan, and Larry for hopping on today and answering some really great questions from the community. So we look forward to doing more of these in the future on a more frequent basis. So definitely stay tuned and keep an eye out for some updates regarding that. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. Hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.